So who is Jaguar Son?
Yeah. So Jaguar Sun is my, I guess, solo project. My name's Chris, and I started it back in around 2017, 2018, after I'd graduated college. Um, Kind of just did it as like sort of a passion project while I was working like full time as a graphic designer. And I guess like lo and behold, it took off enough that I could like, just continue like taking it more and more seriously. And the ball kept rolling to the point where like I left my full-time work, went down to part-time work and just kept pushing the project. But yeah, I make like dream pop, indie pop music, produce it all in my bedroom, here at home. And yeah.
That's awesome. What would you say inspired you in college to sort of start that passion project?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I just a music fan in general, and my whole life I had been playing like instruments like piano and like started learning guitar and bass and all of that. And for the longest time just played each instrument individually and never really thought about recording. Um, but then like listening to artists like Youth Lagoon, and like even like Panda Bear, like just like solo producers that were like doing things on their own, like Youth Lagoon's like minimal setup especially was like it was super inspiring. I was like, there's no reason I can't just like get a little bit of recording gear and start putting all these instruments I've learned together.
Right.
Um yeah, so like coming out of college, I was just like, it's time I start recording and seeing what happens, and eventually landed on the sound I produce today. And yeah.
Nice. So what made you choose the band name?
That was just combining two totally random words together. I wish there was some like deeper, cooler meaning behind it, but it took me months. Like I I just couldn't come up with anything, and I got to the point where I was just like looking at random things, like random words in magazines, and be like this and that, this and this, and then eventually I got Jaguar, and I was like Jaguar what? Like Jaguar this, Jaguar that, and then eventually landed on Sun, and I was like, yeah, sounds cool.
That
Let's lock
works.
it in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a really
Yeah.
cool name.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. So what was the process like for you when you first started making music? I know you said that you sort of played instruments individually first to kind of see what would stick and had those inspirations, but what really landed you in a place where you felt comfortable with what you were making in the process?
Yeah, honestly, it was just a lot of trial and error. Like when I started out, I was mainly just making like simple like beats and like electronic music. And I went through this phase where I would just like start working on a beat or a track like in the morning, and I would just like release it on SoundCloud like later that afternoon. Like it was super rapid pace, just kind of idea dumping, trying a bunch of different things, seeing what stuck. And after, I guess like a year or so of doing that, I eventually like built up enough confidence to start adding more like organic instruments like the electric guitar, acoustic guitar, bass, like the drums. And I finally like started singing on my tracks as well, because for the first like year or so, I just didn't even try. Um, I was a little too self-conscious to start adding vocals to music, but eventually I got over that hump. And yeah, I guess in that period of time, I slowly gravitated away from just making the beats to more like fully like fleshed out like indie pop music with like a more like full band sound. And it was that point where I locked down the name Jaguar Sun and started fresh with that new mindset.
That makes sense. What kind of drove you to start singing and made that transition more comfortable for you, especially lyrically?
Yeah. It was like it always felt like something was missing in my earlier music, and like I knew that that piece was vocals, and like for the fun of it, like I'd try and find like stems of other artists singing and just toss it on the beats that I was making. And like I just slowly like realized like it's just gonna be way easier if I just figure this out myself. And like I always like sang in the car when I drive around and stuff like that. So I knew I was getting like better at it.
Yeah.
And I think after just enough time singing in the car and all that, like I just went for it with my own recorded music and kind of just grew with it over time. It was kind of just forced myself to do it, I guess, and get out of my comfort zone there a bit.
That makes sense, especially doing it over time. Would you say that your creative freedom grew from being out of school? Like, how did that change your creative process with making music once you finished?
I I feel like the creative freedom with music was always there from the start, which is kind of why I loved it so much. Because in college and in school for like graphic design, like a lot of the work that you're doing is your creative vision, but it's surrounded by like very specific parameters. Like a client needs this work done, so the work that you create has to like fit the client's needs. Whereas with like music, it was just my one place where I had full creative control over everything. Like I could make whatever music I wanted, make it sound however I wanted, and there was like no person or thing that I wasn't trying to fulfill the needs of like anyone else but my own like musical pursuits, which is really cool. Like I could just take all this music that I was listening to and inspired by and like figure out a way to make my own unique music that I would want to listen to if I if I found it out in the wild, if
Yes,
that makes sense.
that does make sense. It's really cool that you were able to find that outlet. Because it was an outlet for you instead of something that you were sort of doing as a job at first. Would you say that more lyrically or instrumentally it was more freedom for you?
Hmm. I think so. Well, yes and no, maybe. Like I think as it's continued to progress to be like something like bigger and like something more of a career, I guess, as I've grown, I still feel like I have full creative control. Um, but definitely in those like early like SoundCloud days, it was just like anything went. Like it didn't matter how well produced it was or how like bad it sounded. I was just doing whatever I wanted, like tossing it out there without thinking about it, like not putting time into songs if I didn't feel like I needed to. I just like wrap it up in an hour and throw it out in the world. Whereas now, like my creative process is a lot longer. Like I'll sit on songs for months, if not like a year before I get to the point where I want to release them. So I guess now it's like still full creative control and freedom, but it's just more time and care is put into all of it as the project continues to grow and more people are listening.
Right, I see what you're saying. What aspects do you think take you the longest now? Like, what parts are you sitting on usually when it comes to creating new tracks?
Ooh. I find usually like vocals and the melody are something that takes a bit longer to lock in for me. Like usually when I'm working on a song, I'll build up like the beat, I'll toss in most of the instrumentals first, and I'll focus on the vocals and the lyrics last. Um, so yeah, definitely like vocals, lyrics, those take me a lot longer. And then just mixing songs in general, like after like a song is like fully recorded and I'm in the mixing phase, I usually like to like take my time with it and really make sure that I'm doing the song justice after it's all been recorded and I'm like fine tuning everything. Because I notice sometimes like I'll make decisions, but then like if I give myself just like a week or so to sit on it, I'll like find something that I didn't notice at the time that I can tweak and make a little bit better and then make sure everything's like as good as it possibly can be before I release it within reason.
How do you think your process with mixing has grown since you've gotten more comfortable with doing it over time?
Oh, definitely a ton. I used to hate mixing, so I was so scared that like I would end up ruining my song, just through not knowing what I was doing. And I mean, I still don't really know what I'm doing, from a technical standpoint. But in those early days, it would like really stress me out. I wanted to do it myself, but it still like freaked me out the fact that I was like, I might mix these drums like horribly, and then like the final product is just like not as tight or good as it could have been. But as I've grown with it, like it's one of my favorite things to do now. You just have so much control in how a song sounds when you're in like the mixing phase, and it's a lot of fun just experimenting with different techniques and different things that you can do.
Right, I'd imagine it's more fulfilling to be able to be part of every step of the process and be able to kind of make your vision come alive in that way.
Yeah, yeah, it is nice being able to sort of like have my hand in it all along the way. I think I just work better that way as well when I can just like hunker down and do the bulk of it myself.
Hmm. What would you say has been your favorite song to produce overall?
Hmm. I of the stuff that's currently released, there's like standout songs to me like Next Year off the first album. I really love how that track turned out, and I feel like I was able to like sprinkle in just a little bit of everything that I like really love in music into that track. Um, the more recent record, All We've Ever Known, just as a whole, like I really loved producing that album in its entirety. Like I felt like I learned so much from working on the first album that like that process felt so much smoother and I felt so much more confident in all of those songs in general when I was working on them. It was really I don't know, it was a cool feeling. And now like it continues like with the new music that I'm working on currently, like I just feel like it keeps getting a little bit better bit by bit and I just keep learning a little bit more and my process just continues to get like more and more confident.
So, would you say that fans can expect new music coming soon?
Yeah, I've got a new track coming out. I believe it's June 16th or 17th. Um, which is like next week, I think. A new single, and then I'm currently working on another EP at the moment. But that's not maybe near future. Um, but certainly there's a lot more music on the way.
That's great. Do you think that the new music will have its own sound and differ from your previous works?
To a degree, I feel like it doesn't divert, I guess, from like the overall Jaguar sound I've been working towards like so far. Like I think people who like the previous albums will absolutely still connect with like the new music that's being worked on. But I just think it like as a whole it just continues to grow and get like better bit by bit. Like production wise, it's already better than the last album. I think lyrically and like melodically, it's growing a lot from the last album. So I'm kind of like staying in the same vein, like genre wise, but just continuing to grow in that space, I would say.
That makes sense. How would you say you've maintained a balance of sticking to the sound that fans are used to versus new directions that you want to go in?
Yeah, I feel like I've just been lucky that like the music that's coming out most natural is just music that sort of like stays in that same vein, I guess. Um, Whereas like at its core, it's still very much like Jaguar sound. It's still very much that like indie, like dream pop sound with like folky elements, like rock elements. It's just like what comes out most naturally right now. So I've never had one of those moments where I'm like, oh, I wonder if like this next song is too different or like too obscure for previous fans to like. Um, but I don't know. I feel like it's important to just allow yourself to experiment and try different things. Like if the time ever did come where I wanted to like try something like really different, I don't think I would stop myself from doing it.
Right, absolutely. What do you think made you gravitate towards bedroom pop in particular and that sort of sound?
Yeah, I guess it was just like a lot of like the music I do listen to and have been listening to just kind of like gravitate towards that. It's where like I most like the most music I consume kind of fits in those worlds. Like inspirations like Youth Lagoon back in the day and like Real Estate, Far Caspian. It's just a result of like all the music I consume, I think.
That makes sense. Who would your dream artist to collaborate with be if you could?
I don't know. I always like I always like struggle with those ones because I'm so like it's only recently that I started like doing more collaborative stuff, I guess. Like before I was somewhat closed off to it just because I work so like smoothly alone. But like in the recent like months, I was able to collaborate with like husbands, which is really sweet. Like a band that I listened to in college before I started Jaguar Sun, so it was pretty wild being able to work with them on music. Working on music with a band called Stray Fossil right now. I think if I had like a dream artist to collaborate with, like I don't know, I would love to do something with like I don't know, Youth Lagoon's making music again. They're back. He's back, which is pretty sweet. I have an affinity for like the Fruit Bats. I love his music as well. It'd be cool, really cool doing something with like an artist like that.
That's awesome. Since your debut album came out during COVID around 2020, would you say that the impact that impacted the release for you and sort of your relationship with playing shows and everything?
Yeah. In terms of like how it impacted the album release, like it's hard to say how things would have gone if the pandemic never hit. But in a sense, I almost wonder if like it helped that release in some senses, like where people were stuck inside and maybe needed more music to listen to or had more time to find more music. Because like the release went extremely well, I think, in terms of like how well the songs performed and the audience that grew with that. But it definitely did affect my ability to sort of explore the live space. Because just before the pandemic hit, I was like finally like getting a band together to try and explore like playing the music live. And I think we had like maybe two rehearsals and then the pandemic hit and like that obviously closed those doors for the next 3 years or so.
Right.
Um, but it all ends up working out, like coming out or like as the pandemic started to ease up, like I met the current live band that I perform with now, and they're incredible. Like I have like a great group of people surrounding this project, and we started playing live over the last year, and it's just been going so well. Like I wouldn't change how anything has happened up until this point.
What was the process of meeting your live band that you've been playing with now, and how has your dynamic with the music changed since bringing them on?
Yeah. So like as the pandemic did start easing up, one of my friends was sort of starting to host these like online live stream shows, um, and asked if I wanted to do one. So I had one friend that like played guitar extremely well. His name's Jesse, and he plays guitar in the band now. Um, and we got together and started rehearsing like a little duo set to play at this live stream. And my friend Amit, who hosted it, he's super well connected in like the local music scene. So like after we did that, he was like, "Man, if you want to like build out a full band, he knows like I know these people." So one by one, we started like bringing more people into the mix, like a bass player, got a drummer on board, eventually got a synth player on board. So it's kind of nice because like I got to start like as a duo, figure that out, and then sort of like learn how to play more with each person individually as they all came on at individual times. So instead of like learning how to like guide and lead like a full band, I sort of got to ease into it a little bit, like bit by bit. And now I love it. It's like it's really cool seeing how like the full band sort of takes the songs that I recorded and dissects them and makes them their own as we perform them. And it just like it feels like the live experience is different from the recorded experience in the best way. Um, and it definitely shapes how I like think about writing and recording new music too. Now knowing that I have like an incredible live band that can perform these as well, I feel like I'm more conscious of the parts that they could be playing while I'm writing and recording new stuff.
Absolutely. Would you say that it changed your relationship with any of your previous works as well? Are there any that you prefer how you play them live now versus when they were originally recorded?
I think I love both equally. Like I feel like the recorded stuff serves like a very different purpose for people than like the live does. The live gets like a bit more loud and a bit more rocky than a lot of the recorded stuff gets. And I feel like that's a really like sweet way to like sort of experience these songs in a live setting. Um, so like I feel like if someone goes back home and listens to the recorded stuff after a show, like they get something different out of it than they got from seeing us live. And I love that there's those two avenues.
I definitely felt that way after the show that I went to, and I really enjoyed both aspects and hearing the differences. So you're absolutely right.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. I know you've talked about playing live shows recently. I was wondering, since you're from Canada, how have you enjoyed the American touring?
It's been sweet. Like I'm so excited that I've been able to see all these different places in the States because of music. Like before, I'd only been to the States maybe like three times. Once to New York, uh, and I think another time in like Pennsylvania, and I forget where the third time was, but I've barely seen any of it at all. So now going from that to like getting to like be on the road and like go from state to state and city to see it also like rapid pace. It's been a really surreal and cool experience. Um, and it's like so much nicer touring in the States because so much of it is like more condensed. Like in Canada, it's a bit harder to like strictly tour Canada because it's so spread out. Like you'll have such massive stretches of road with like no cities that necessarily make sense to play. Whereas the States, you get like all these really cool routes with cities that are actually kind of close to each other and like you have reasonable drives and things like that. I love it. I've loved every trip in so far.
What would you say have been some of your favorite places to visit or shows that have stuck out to you?
Mm. First time on the West Coast was really cool. We got to go last fall with a band called Fang Suave. We opened for them on a run from San Francisco up to LA, and then it cut across like the southern states. So it was like very surreal finally making it to the West Coast, and seeing spots like San Francisco for the first time or LA, and it's beautiful out there too, like seeing Joshua Tree, like the desert. First time ever being in a desert before. So like things like that are real highlights where you're like experiencing these things for the first time. Um, and shows like, I don't know, a lot of them have really special moments. Like Chicago, we've played Chicago a couple times now, and each time has been really, really cool, great turnout, amazing crowd. Um, all like anywhere from like that, like playing like a sold out show in Chicago to playing like very small like attic space at a venue called Mahal's in like Ohio. Every experience has been like unique and kind of cool in its own way.
How do you feel about adapting to the energy between the smaller shows and the bigger shows? Have you noticed any differences in the way that the songs are performed or anything like that?
It can be challenging for sure. Like it's definitely like when you're playing like in front of like a full room, it's a totally different energy than when like you're playing in front of a small space with maybe less people that like if it's a smaller city or like a spot where you don't have as many listeners and the turnout isn't as high. Like uh I find it like less hard from a music standpoint, but more hard from like sort of a mental standpoint where you still got to like remember that there's people in both crowds that really care about your music. So if you're playing to like a room of 10 people, you really need to like give them the same show as you would like a sold out room elsewhere. Like it's important to like be in it 100% no matter what. Um, but musically, like I feel like as we continue to grow as a band, we're getting better at sort of like being able to play the different spaces and like dial things up for like more energetic shows, but also be able to play like more calmly and more tastefully for maybe like quieter, more intimate shows too. I think we're figuring that out.
I get what you're saying 100%. What shows would you say that you're anticipating the most that are coming up?
Right now we have um I guess like so far each thing that we have coming up. Like we have a more local show to me coming up in Cambridge. It's always really nice playing like in the area because I find oddly enough we like play far from home way more than we do locally. So when we do have a local show like our one coming up in Cambridge, it's always nice playing to like friends and family. But then after that we have a run with a band called Paul Cherry and the Matson 2. We're opening for them on a little tour they're doing in August from I think it's Indianapolis back to Toronto. And I'm so pumped for that. Like, huge fan of Paul Cherry and the Mats, and like it'll be pretty surreal being able to play some shows with them.
That's awesome. How would you say you keep your energy up while touring, especially going from place to place really quickly, like you said in the US?
That's definitely challenging too. Like it's it's been it's been tough, like getting used to the touring lifestyle. Like so far, I haven't done anything too long. I feel like our longest run was like 2 weeks, but it's really tiring, both like physically and emotionally. And I'm still like very much learning how to do it in the most like healthy way I can. But sometimes you just have like days where you're like up at 6 to start driving to the next city, and you're going to bed at like 3 or 4 in the morning. And you kind of just have to accept that that's what it is, and just like make sure you're in the right like mindset, like you know what you're getting into, and you're just mentally prepared for it because it's super tiring. Um,
I can imagine that gets to be a lot, yeah.
but it's also like so rewarding that it balances out. Like being able to play shows and meet all these new people on the at these venues, or like meet fans or friends that I've met through music that I've been talking online with for so long that I can finally see in person. It's just like such a special experience that like it far outweighs any of the like challenges I find on the road. And that motivation really keeps you going.
I'm glad that it's been really rewarding. Were there any fan experiences that also stuck out to you and kind of made it more rewarding for you?
Totally. Yeah. Like, there's been multiple shows where like someone just travels from like excessively far away to come and see it. And I'll never get over like how special that is, or how surreal it is that like someone would like fly out from across the country to see a show. Like at our one Toronto show, we had someone fly from like the West Coast, I think it was, or New York. We played like our first time playing New York. Someone had flown out from California to see that show, and I was like,
Oh, wow.
I'll I don't know. It's like it just makes it so special that someone can care enough to do something about that. And then I don't know. It's nice that like something that you create can make an impact on someone. It's just like a really motivating and special thing, I guess.
Right. Going back to sort of the creative process for a moment, how would you feel that you've gotten yourself out of creative ruts when you've been in them, and what sort of inspires you to get out of them?
Yeah, I've definitely had my fair share. I I think like just not forcing things in those moments is pretty key. Like if you're just not in the right zone, or if nothing's coming to you naturally, just kind of accept where you're at and understand that it's just like a, a period of time, and that will definitely pass. Like I find constantly like listening to new music is extremely helpful. Like if I'm stuck, nothing's coming out, stop for that week, maybe stop for a few days, just listen to more music, consume more like content, go outside, like, and eventually things just click again. Like you hear something that's like, yeah, like this song is sick, that makes me inspired to go and start writing again. Or this, like, I've been listening to all this music this week, like there's something special in all this, like how do I take that and create my own thing from like what I've been listening to this week that's been super inspiring. And yeah, I don't know, I find like music, just listening to more of it always helps me the most. And then just getting space from, or giving yourself space to like step away from it for as long as you need to can really help as well. Like just do something else if you're in a rut, and then get back into it when you're motivated again.
Would you say that those inspirations while you were in a rut definitely influenced the sound of your newer music as well if you were in those ruts during that time?
I think so, yeah. Like I'm always like taking little bits and pieces from what I'm listening to. Like you might hear like just even the way someone mixes something, like the way they've balanced like the vocals, guitars, and drums in this track like is inspiring enough to like hey, like maybe that's a space I can grow in with my mixing, and then like it gets you back in the right groove, or like you listen to a song and it just has like a cool beat and you're like, yeah, like I love beats like that. And like I've noticed like I listen to a lot of music with beats like that. Like maybe I can try something with something similar. Though yeah, it always like constantly like shapes or reshapes how I'm thinking about my own music.
What advice would you give for people who want to start making music but they might be afraid to do so, especially like you said, struggling with doing the vocals and everything like that?
I guess just keep experimenting. Like I feel like just keep experimenting and keep finishing songs and releasing things, or wrapping them up and like putting them out there. I think that helped a ton just to be able to like learn how to continue to try a bunch of new stuff, learn how to like finish it and put it out in the world and not dwell on it, and then just continue to grow into the next thing. I think that was huge in helping me get started and grow. Um, and I think just going for it sometimes, like if you're scared to sing, like find a space where you can like record comfortably, like find a spot where you can be alone, where you're not conscious about other people listening, like, and just go for it and see what happens. Like find different ways to like make it work for you. Um, yeah, I think it's just really important to keep creating. Um, and don't be worried if something you create isn't like the next big thing for you, or that like it's still worth putting time into that, and then maybe that idea will lead to something even bigger down the road. Like I think that's what I would say.
For sure. Would you say that working with some of the people that you work with in your band currently have helped you with different barriers that you might have still had when it came to performing or anything like that?
Yeah, I think just having like a group of friends that you really care about surrounding like the project, it just helps knowing like especially like from a live standpoint that I'm not like alone up there. Like I'm not like isolated and just like by myself when I'm on the stage. I've got like friends right beside me doing the same thing. And like I think there's some comfort in that. Um, and it's just inspiring watching them play and like seeing how they have like sort of taken my music and just envisioned it in this new way. Like it's inspiring for me to like continue to get better at playing live myself. It's inspiring as I continue to like write new music.
Where can fans check you out if they haven't been familiar with your music or anything like that before?
Yeah, you can find the music on like all the streaming platforms, like Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, like all those places. And then for social media stuff, like I'm really only active on Instagram. So I definitely recommend following there if you want to keep up with like what the band is up to, what I'm up to, new music coming out, any of that stuff. Instagram is definitely the spot to keep up.
Awesome. And why should people see you on tour?
I think we just crafted like a really fun and I think unique show that I think people would really enjoy watching. Like I'm really proud of the band and everything that they've done and added to the music, and I think it's worth coming out to some of these shows. And if you like the music, you'll get something new from it too, seeing the live band perform it in a way that you might not expect. So